So as I read your story of being recruited into the Unification Church cult, I was looking for what it was among all the universal human needs that really seemed to have the strongest lure on you. And I made a few notes, but I'm curious to just hear you remember and reflect upon what was it that you think had the strongest lure for you as you were being recruited into this organization?
It's a great question. And may I just say, to be scholarly about it, there's a ton of people born into cults. So it's not just recruited into cults.
Right.
That's more my story, but I work with a ton. We call them second generation or third generation, where they are angry because they say, I never joined. I didn't have a choice. So, and as a therapist helping people, it's more challenging to help them figure out who they are versus in my case, I was 19 years old. I had very clear values and beliefs and goals. To the extent I can be as objective as I can on my consciousness as a 19-year-old, there were things that were outside of my range of experience, and it made me curious. So I'd say that was definitely my desire to know and understand, and my curiosity, because I had traveled to a number of countries. I was curious to get to know people from other countries, and the Moonies had people from 12 different countries, I think, at that center when I came. So that was like, wow, people from 12 different countries living together. That's interesting. That there must be something that is pulling all these different cultures and beliefs and religious backgrounds together. That was something. I also want to say something my father thought he was helping me out with, because my father owned a hardware store. I was brought in to work there and taught to sell things to people. And he said, Steve, you can always tell when people are lying by their eyes. Like if someone's lying, their eyes are shifty. And I really believed that until after I got out of the Moonies, and I was thinking back, because the women were just making incredible eye contact, looking right through me, and they lied their face off, but they were so believable. And it was so innocuous sounding that it got past my defense system. So that was another interesting piece. Another thing, honestly, reflecting back, is the exuding of certainty.
Yeah.
Was something, because in the real world, real people, they say, well, I believe this, but you're always open. There's some doubt, maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong, or whatever. But this is a universal that I keep coming across with cult true believers, that they are so certain that it makes you feel like there's something missing in you, that you can't walk around with that level of certainty about reality. So that was a bit, again, triggering my curiosity. And then there was the camaraderie piece that was also unusual for me. I had been in I was on a basketball team, a chorus at school, college, in classes, but there was something like, hey, we have the inside track on things, and you may or may not be spiritual enough to be ready for it, but maybe you are. And that's another thing I want to say about my recruitment. They didn't say Moon is the Messiah, bow to the floor, he's 10 times greater than Jesus. I come from a Jewish background. I would have run. if they had even said church or Christian or a Korean, messianic figure. It was always like, we're living in very special times. Have you noticed, Steve? Um, things are getting really heated up, and there's a lot of conflict in the world. And so you're writing poetry, right? You want to be a professor and teach creative writing. That's honorable. That's nice. But the world, it seems like it needs a lot more than that, Steve. Are you sure you're living up to your full potential? So there's that, not attacking my beliefs and my value systems, but again, this conveying of there may be a greater plan here. Are you open to the possibilities? And again, knowing what I know now, and this is, I'm going to skip to the third section for a second. I hope you don't mind now. But what I often ask my clients, once they learn about the influence continuum and bite model and they understand the frames, I ask them to imagine going back to when they were first recruited. If you could go back knowing then what you know now, what would you have said and done differently? And everybody goes, I would have told them to go F themselves, or I would have run in the other direction, or I never would have asked her out. I never would have gone on that dating app or whatever. And I'm bringing it up because the critical thing that I want to convey, and I want your listeners to be leaving this talk more optimistically than pessimistically, is we have neuroplasticity, we have neurogenesis, and we can learn, and we can protect ourselves, and we can heal ourselves in very dramatic ways if we understand how the neuroscience works, and if we understand that if we tell somebody, don't think of a white horse, they think of a white horse. When a clinician says, don't think of your trauma, you think more of your trauma. It amplifies. And to say, remember before you had the trauma, what your body felt like, remember those states of consciousness, or can you imagine in the future, everything's healed, and how integrated you feel, and how grounded you feel in your body, and how confident you feel, and yet the locus of control for your life is in you, and you're not looking outside for someone else to tell you what's true and what to believe and how, and how to live your life. So there's such powerful, human beings are extraordinary, and I just love to meet people and learn from them, because everybody's different. And not only learning different strategies and how people overcame all kinds of adversities, but just being grateful that we're alive. And, as a cancer survivor, 17 years later, I'm feeling great. In fact, I just came back from my yearly physical, and my blood work was perfect, and my blood pressure is great, and I'm like, thank you. I'm about to turn 70.
Yes.
I'm doing this hard trauma work, but I'm also trying to stay grounded as much as possible and enjoy my life. So back to the techniques. I want to explain. Deception is outright lying, withholding vital information, and distorting information to make it palatable. And with all of those things, walk through the world believing people, trusting people, but also pay attention, because if your gut or you have an inkling something's off, pay attention and follow up with a question. So you told me that you're not religious at all. In other words, if I'm in the group for 3 months or 6 months or a year, there's not going to be any surprises. We're not going to be reading a scripture. We're not going to be bowing to an altar. We're not going to be meditating or praying or chanting or yoging or anything else like that. So what I'm trying to say is use your language to probe, ask direct questions, and wait for a direct answer to your question. Because if it's a questionable group, they'll try to change the topic, deflect it, turn it back on you. What's wrong? You're so untrusting, Steve. And I'm like, no, I'm just a good consumer.
Yeah.
My time is very valuable. You're wanting my time. I want to know who I'm talking to. Don't tell me the name of a group, but it's actually one of 700 front groups. And just like learn how to be assertive, to ask questions, because I say if it's legitimate, it will stand up to scrutiny. And if it's not legitimate, why waste your time and energy?
And you offer, it's in chapter 7 of Combating the Cult Mind Control book, that you provide concrete, exact questions that people can take with them and maybe.
Yeah, tell me about your leader.
Yes.
Is your leader the Messiah or a prophet who claims to talk to God, or an apostle? By the way, we have 40 to 50 million Americans who are following an apostle or a prophet who claims to speak directly to God. This is part of the political problem we have in the United States, because these people were told by their prophet that Trump won the election in 2020 when there's all evidence to the contrary.
Right.
But these people are going to follow God's words because Satan is everywhere else.
Right.
So this is part of the situation we find ourselves in. And the media keeps calling these folks Christian evangelicals when they're not, in my opinion. They're members of mind control cults.
That gives you a sense of the scale of the problem.